Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Leonie Hunter and here I share my experiences in business, lifestyle, and self-care. And today I'll be talking to you about the business mistakes I made in my 20s. Okay, now this may be a long video, so I'm gonna just hop right into it. So before I get started, I'm probably going to jump around a little bit. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of history about what businesses I started in my 20s. Early 20s, I started a personal styling business. I'll get some details about that later. 2, I had a virtual assistant business, which parlayed into something really awesome later on down the line, but it was a 9-to-5 job. And then I started my home staging business in my 20s as well. So I have a business in my early 20s, mid 20s, and late 20s. Now that that's been all laid out, let me get into you the mistakes I made through that entire decade. Mistake number 1, jumping into business without doing any research, like none. So let's go back to the personal styling business. So what had happened was I was asked to do a job by somebody who liked the way that I dressed. She said, "Oh, I think you dress well. You're well put together. I would love if you could dress me or style me." And she offered to pay me. And I'm like, wow, is this what entrepreneurship is? People see your talent and just pay for it? That was then. Now I understand. Just because you got talent don't mean people are gonna pay. Anyway, I digress. Back then, I'm like, okay, yes, I will definitely start this business. I'm going to get a website. I'm going to get business cards. I'm going to do everything because I now have a business. And what really made my head big, she told her friend about it and her friend hired me and then paid me. I had 2 clients out of thin air. I was like, wow, look at God. Anyway, I already have clients. I know she's gonna tell her friends and her friends and her friends, and this is about to just take off like wildfire. I'm about to blow up, like for real. That didn't happen, and you wanna know why? Because I didn't do my research. I didn't go in and look into, okay, what does it take to be a personal stylist? What type of education is there? What type of access do they have? What steps do I need to take to become a personal stylist? In my mind, I'm like, I'm just gonna take them to the mall and pick out some outfits. One person liked me based off of just me being me. And then she told her friend who trusted her word, but it ended after that. And I got discouraged and I was like, oh my God, I thought I was supposed to be a personal stylist. Now I'm not. So I didn't continue on with it. But if I had did my research, I would have understood more about what to expect when becoming a personal stylist. And that's not just how much can a personal stylist make, because that's what I was thinking, so I can know how much to charge them. But I should have been looking more into what is the day-to-day life of a personal stylist. I should have called a personal stylist and asked what it took for them to become that. I also should have for personal stylist demographics in my area, how many personal styling companies were in my surrounding area in my city. Things like that, not to discourage me, but just so I could go forward informed in my business. And that's something I learned along the lines is becoming informed, just so you have a roadmap and understanding of where you're going and what you're doing in your business. And you're not just, flying by the seat of your pants, because that may be good for a little while, but for longevity, that's a no-go. Mistake number 2, putting money into marketing when I have no one to market to. When I have no idea who my client is, that is what I was doing. Putting money into a brand photo shoot. Remember that personal stylist job I was just talking about? Yes. First client, I'm about to do a photo shoot. I got 2 clients, I'm about to blow up. No, that was not the case. I got my hair, makeup done, outfit, taking pictures, putting them on a website and thinking I had to have all the bells and whistles. I think that's another mistake I made, just thinking I had to have all the bells and whistles before I did anything. For instance, with this whole YouTube thing, this is also not my first time trying a YouTube channel. I've tried doing them before. My heart wasn't in it then, and I believe my heart is in it now. So yes. But for instance, with this time around with my YouTube journey, I didn't get all the fancy lights and stuff like that because I want to see how far I go with just my creativity and with the items I have in home right now. Learning from my past experiences in my 20s, from the personal styling business to even starting a YouTube channel back in my younger years that never saw the light of day. But I got the equipment. I bought the equipment. I bought the lights. I bought the camera, tripod, the camera, everything, so I can have a quality video back then. And I never even even put it up on YouTube. And so I learned from my early 20s, do not spend money on your business unless you absolutely have to, literally have to, but not because you think it's going to make you better or like it's going to make you more official or something like that. Get your feet wet. Find out what works, find out what doesn't work first before you start spending money on things in your business. That's what I learned in my early 20s. Mistake number 3, I could say this was around in my mid 20s. I wasn't really flexible with my clients. Now, this was at the point where I had my virtual assistant business. First of all, I had quit my 9-to-5 job. We can talk about that on another day, but I started my virtual assistant business after I quit my job, and I was getting business again here and there. It was small things, but I was like, okay, this is trickling. This one, I wasn't as confident. I wasn't thinking I was going to blow up. I was like, ugh, I think I should go back to my job because it wasn't working really well. But I ended up getting a really good client where I managed his client operations. So that was really fun for me. I learned a lot, and I was able to take my virtual assistant business and parlay it into a full-time job out of thin air. So that was awesome. But during that experience, I wasn't really flexible with the advice that I gave and thinking that everything had to be my way and everything had to be what I thought originally in my mind, because I wasn't very good at changing on the spot or changing to fit somebody else's view or vision. I'm like, if you hired me, it should be my vision. You hired me to make the decision. We should do what I want. But that was not very productive, and we ended up still working well together, but my home staging business had taken off a little more by the time we ended, so it makes sense for us to go our separate ways. But I learned that the experience could have been more fruitful if I was more flexible in the solutions I presented. So I'll talk a little bit more about that with my current business, Evie & Company, and how I learned that lesson again, but in a different way. But for this period of time in my mid 20s with my virtual assistant business, making sure to be more flexible with my clients was important. Why? Because from that flexibility, when you're working with somebody, it allows you to have more trust and a stronger relationship with your client or your client with you. So that was something that I learned, and I'm glad I learned it because it helps you foster stronger relationships in anything you want to do. Mistake number 4, thinking I was too old for stuff, like anything, like starting a YouTube channel, doing whatever, like thinking I was too old to start something or it's too late to do something. That's not true. I'm in my 30s now, and I don't feel like I'm too old to do YouTube, even though I felt like I was too old in my 20s. Mistake number 5, letting insecurities and my past slow me down. Now, what I mean by this is, in my 20s, there was a lot of times where I felt like I am this age and I should be further by now. When I was in college, I thought I would be here. I thought I would be married. I thought I would have my own house. I thought I would have whatever. I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm never gonna get there. I'm like, I'm getting rejected here, and I am feeling like I'm not reaching the goals that I had set in my mind. Now that I'm in my 30s, I realize like I feel younger now than I did in my 20s. I feel like I have more life ahead of me than I did in my 20s because I understand how life ebbs and flows a little bit more. Obviously, if somebody who's like 40, 50 watching this, they're like, girl, you don't know a damn thing. And I'm like, you're right, but I know more now than I did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever the case may be. I've learned more now, and those insecurities that I had in my 20s about where I wasn't going to be and all that stuff, those ones aren't there anymore because I'm like, there's always going to be something that you didn't grasp or that you didn't quite hit 100%, but you still came further than you were yesterday because you're continually improving. That's something I'm really glad I learned from my 20s, because that continuous state of negativity, it weighs you down and it keeps you from progressing. So to move forward as an effective business owner, knowing that mistakes happen, things are not always going to go the way you want them to go or as planned, and you can troubleshoot it, deal with it, think about it, express your raw feelings for a moment, but then move past it and don't stupor in negativity, because that is definitely going to hold your dreams back. And if you focus on being positive, then you can get a lot further in the things you're worried about than if you just continue to be negative and worry about them. And for me, how I even got out of that thinking is, for a moment, I was like, I've been doing this negative thinking thing for a while. I go through this record in my mind of all the things that I've done wrong or all the things I could have done better, when this time I'm just going to try being positive. and I'm going to try focusing on the best parts of a situation instead of the worst parts. It shifted my perspective in my 30s, and I just feel like I'm more efficient at life. Now, I'm not going to say you couldn't catch me on a bad day one day, but I know for a fact that I've improved. And that's because I learned how to approach things from a more positive perspective before I jumped immediately to the negative. Mistake number 6, not knowing / understanding my why. So for me, in my early 20s and in my mid 20s, I probably wouldn't have been in that negative state so much, or I would have been more optimistic about the success of my business if I really had a strong why. So a why basically is the reason why you are doing your business, the reason why you're doing whatever you're doing. What is your why? I have started this business because I want to have ... I started this business because I need ... For me, I didn't have a why in my early 20s. So when something didn't go my way, I'm like, I don't need this, or this wasn't for me. And I would move on to something else because I didn't have something tethering me to needing to make that endeavor work. Does that make sense? So now my why is I want to have freedom over my time so that I can grow my family. That is something I really, really want. So I've sacrificed so much and I've invested so much into this business because I want a certain lifestyle and a certain level of freedom in my life to nurture the family I desire to have, amongst other things. So that's why it's good to have a solid why. So when things get a little tough, you have a stronger connection to your business goals and your business dreams. Number 7, giving up too soon. In my early 20s, obviously I gave up on my personal styling business. And my virtual assistant business, I didn't give up on that. We decided to take our businesses in separate ways. And home staging, I haven't given up on that either. But it was a continuous idea of wanting to give up throughout my 20s that I learned was a mistake. Like I said, thinking positively while you're an entrepreneur is the key, because if you think you cannot do it, then you're not going to do it. You have to believe that you can because you're already your number one cheerleader when you are doing your business. So if you're not cheering yourself on and nobody else is, then you're not going to feel motivated to do it. Make sure that you're not constantly thinking about giving up, but take it all the way to the end. And obviously, if it doesn't work out, then you could deal with that then. So don't think every day, every step of the way that it's not going to work out. Think positively so it will work out. Okay, so those are the top mistakes I think I made in my 20s. I'm quite sure I made many more, but these are the ones I can remember. There you have it. Okay, so thank you again for watching today's video. And something that I want to leave you with from the mistakes I learned in my 20s, one of the things I said was not being flexible. Now in my home staging business, I believe that I've been able to go a lot further in my relationships with people, building bridges and stronger community with people by being flexible on things that I could be flexible with. Obviously not doing any back-breaking flexibility, but making sure that I'm not so rigid, because that's not how life is. Life isn't very rigid. Life, it flows. There's ups and downs. So making sure that I'm flexible with people enough to say, okay, I could be lenient in this area of my policy or in my normal protocol or in my pricing, just so that I could facilitate that relationship and build trust and have a stronger relationship with this client. That's one of my biggest lessons I learned in my 20s, and I'm so happy I learned it because it has taken me further into not only building my business, but building friendships and relationships with people. Okay, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you in my next one. So please come back. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.